All right, we're live. Hi, everybody. My name is Melanie Dizon. I'm the Director of Education and Content at the Davis Finney Foundation, and I'm here with Bart Narter. How you doing, Bart?
I'm doing great. How about yourself?
I'm doing well. So we know each other through the foundation. You've been a Davis Finney Foundation ambassador for quite a while. You've been a friend of the foundation for a long time. Um, so some people have heard your story. We talked to you recently about DBS, and I think we're going to talk a little bit about that today for those who are unsure of the story. But I'd love for you to introduce yourself and tell people, a little bit about who you are, who you were and are pre-Parkinson's, and then what was your journey like, and what was the diagnosis process like?
Well, everyone always asks, when you do a Parkinson's thing, when were you diagnosed?
Right.
And I was diagnosed on December 6th of 2011. So it's really been quite a while that I've had this now, over a decade. Kind of scary.
Mm-hmm.
And kind of your first trigger that made you go look for the diagnosis was I was on a big bike ride called Levi Life Hybrid's Gran Fundo in Santa Rosa, California. And I climbed to the top of this hill, and it started getting wet and cold. And my left arm started shaking uncontrollably, such that I couldn't control the bike to get down the hill. I had to sag out, which made me very unhappy. And I knew that something was up. And I had previous symptoms of that, like when I hammered up the hill, my left hand would shake for like a millisecond. And I just attributed that to the fact that I was standing up on the bike and, maybe pressure on the spine and something. But this was not that. This was like my arm just went off.
And you've been a cyclist for a really long time, so
yeah,
okay.
I've been a cyclist, I guess. Well, certainly for 15 years. I've got to do some math. I'm not very good at 10, 15 years ago kind of time frame.
Sometimes I say it was like 10 years ago, and they're like, no, it was 30. I'm like, oh, right.
yeah, I think it could be 30 for me too.
Yeah.
I know because I did death ride 10 times, so there's a decade's worth of riding. And anyway, so I got my initial diagnosis on December 6th of 2011. I gave my employer 1 year's notice to find my replacement.
Okay, hold on. Let's slow down. So you got the diagnosis, and what happened? I mean, was there was no misdiagnosis in there? The first doctor you went to, and like, you have Parkinson's, and what happened?
Oh, the diagnosis. So first, I noticed that I was walking a little funny because I had some knee surgery, and it wasn't quite 100%. It was like at 98%. And I went back to that surgeon and said, hey, what's going on? And he said, it's just one of those things. Sorry. It didn't dawn on him it could be Parkinson's. And then I have had shoulder problems and had 2 shoulder surgeries where he just goes arthroscopically and then scrapes the crud out. And a friend of mine who's a pediatric cardiologist had said, Bart, did you have a stroke? I said, no, I don't think so. Why would you say that? He said, because when you walk, your right hand swings and your left hand doesn't. And so I then went to my shoulder surgeon and said, what happened? And he didn't think Parkinson's. He just said, well, it's just one of those things. And I then went to a PT guy, because again, he did the work on the shoulder afterwards, and he couldn't figure it out. And then the first neurologist I saw had me diagnosed like in 60 seconds. He was not even a movement disorder specialist. And he just said, hey, you got Parkinson's, no doubt about it. And I kind of Googled Parkinson's because I didn't know anything about it. And I found that the Parkinson's, let me think what it's called now. The Parkinson Institute is in Sunnyvale, California, and it's a center of excellence. It's now not in existence anymore, but at the time it was a center of excellence. I Googled them, skipped right past the denial stage and went and faxed in my application to go see somebody the next day. Regrettably, it's tough to get in to see a movement disorder specialist, even in the Bay Area, so I had to wait like a month, but it was all good. And that's my diagnosis story.
So you were just, okay, I have it. Okay, let's do it, see what I can do.
Yeah, that's exactly. I was in solve the problem mode. And I didn't get very emotional about it. It's like, okay, this is a quote of my own. I make up quotes. One of them is, "On the road of life, there are many potholes, so you better have good shock absorbers." And that's
All right. So you did that. And then what was, I mean, fortunately you were exercising, but what was the first action, they were,
I'm sorry, I don't. Have I lost you? Well, I'll tell you what my first action was. Is I went and told my boss, and I gave him 1 year's notice, and of course, he took more than that to find my replacement, and that was kind of funny.
no issues telling work at all? Just
No, well, it was pretty darn easy to tell work because I led the business unit, so I could tell all the people who reported to me, and even if they weren't happy about it, they couldn't, thwack me or anything. My boss, I was a little worried about because we were acquired by a giant company with 60,000 employees, and my boss was from the acquiring company. He was in charge of running us, and I just knew how he thought. He's pretty cutthroat, and I thought he might want to just fire me right away or something like that. So of course I first told HR because then you get protection. And the company that acquired us is part of a conglomerate called Mercer Marsh McClellan, and Marsh is the largest insurance broker, and Mercer is the largest HR outsourcer. So we've got pretty powerful HR at our company. So I was kind of kept safe from any things that my boss might do. And
good advice.
He wanted me to stay around as long as possible. But then, once he found out my replacement, which again took 13 months, he wanted me off the payroll ASAP. Hey, we can't have two people making that kind of money.
Right.
So it was not exactly love from him, but I did feel love from the company because I met a guy. So I was on the senior management team at this company. And since then, they have another guy who's on the senior management team who's also been diagnosed with Parkinson's.
Wow.
For about 4 years. So we're going to become the official charity of the company I used to work for is going to have an event in September where we're going to do a bike ride in London after the all hands meeting or before it to raise money for Parkinson's.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
So I assume that part of your exit strategy involved looking into disability. So
Absolutely.
can you talk a little bit about what that was like? What did you have in mind knowing, okay, I've got this year at my job? What were you hoping to set up?
Well, with disability, again, we've got amazing benefits. So I am still on the company's healthcare plan at employee subsidized rates. I also wanted to get Social Security disability, and that was quite the process. It was actually a 2.5-year process because one of the things I did after I was diagnosed is I did a little bike ride from Lisbon to Zurich. And I asked my doctor if I could do it, and she said yes. And I didn't. And what she said is that I do like 100K a day, and she put that in her medical notes that I was going to do 100K a day. And I'm sure the judge saw this and said, I can't do 100K a day. I mean, how can you be disabled? But it doesn't say you can type on a computer or read your own handwriting, which you kind of need to be able to do to work in the white collar world that I worked in. And so my first hearing was on the 4th of November of 2014. And these guys, again, they're monopoly. They're like the DMV. So they can take as much time as they want to, and they often do. So I believe before this, actually, I applied for disability, and they always reject you the first time. That's just as a matter of course. Then you have to appeal it.
I think that's an important piece to know because that is sort of just standard procedure. But if you don't hear that you think that it's like you're just done and you can't keep going. And so I just want everyone listening to know you're going to probably get rejected. That doesn't mean anything. You got to keep going.
Right. And so then you do a paper appeal, and then they rejected me again, which is pretty unusual with Parkinson's because Parkinson's being a progressive and chronic disease, meaning it always gets worse and never goes away. It's not like you're going to get cured of this instantly or anything like that. So
Did
usually,
they give you a reason for that second denial?
well, again, I think it was about the biking.
Okay.
Then I went in front of the judge on the 25th of February of 2015. A mere, what would that be? November to February.
3 months, yeah.
5 months later, we submitted the appeal. They replied on the 20th of April of 2016. So it took them over a year to generate their reply, which was also a denial. And then we submitted it again and got a rehearing on the 3rd of August and got the positive ruling on the 28th of December, all of 2016.
So 2 years, basically.
Oh, yeah. But they gave me retroactive coverage. So that's all goodness. And that was the end of it. But it was quite the process.
Right.
I
Until
have
that
private
gives you coverage
disability.
until
Sorry?
This current coverage gives you coverage until when? Or
Until
never?
I'm 65.
65, okay.
Or wait, no, the Social Security continues forever because when I turn 65, the disability becomes just old age Social Security.
Got it.
And then I have a private disability from my company. Again, strong HR, strong benefits when you work for a company that's the largest HR outsourcing company in the world. And that I've got private disability insurance until I turn 65.
Okay.
And
Tori Birch says, yes, my husband just went through this process and it took a little, after over a year, I'm guessing, to be approved, but he had to attain an attorney to win his case.
Yeah, I had to retain an attorney as well, but it wasn't me who retained it. It was the private disability insurance company. Because the way it's structured is the disability company, in this case, the Hartford, promises me X% of my salary net of any Social Security benefits. So let's say I get $7,000 a month. If Social Security pays me $2,000 a month, they only have to come up with $5,000. So they were financially motivated to get me covered under Social Security. Unfortunately, I learned that they have an issue around sleazy people, sleazy lawyers who might get a win for you and take it all in their fee. So they limit the amount that the attorney can receive, which means that the attorney's not going to give you that much time.
Right.
So they used a company, I can't remember, they were called the Advocator Group. And there was probably, they didn't call them a law company because there's only one lawyer in the entire company. The rest of the people are all around there, or paralegals or stuff like that, because they were really looking at minimizing the lawyer time.
Yeah.
To fall under that cap. And I had to work very closely with them to win the case because, quite frankly, they hired people locally as freelancers to represent me before the judge. And these guys did not prep very well because, again, it's all money constrained. They're giving $200 to present my case. They're not going to spend 2 hours. So I had to brief them on the case before we went before the judge, and I figured this out pretty quickly.
Yeah.
It was quite the adventure getting the Social Security. And I didn't care about the Social Security, but I cared about the Medicare.
Yeah. And so you feel like you have great coverage for the doctors you want to see, the specialists you want to see, and everything that you've needed from, we're going to talk a little bit about DBS, but everything along the way.
Oh, absolutely. I have Medicare, and then after primary and as secondary, I have Blue Cross Blue Shield that comes from my company. So I'm really in a good situation because I've got a $3,000 out-of-pocket maximum on the Blue Cross Blue Shield, and I blow through that pretty quickly.
Yeah.
So I know my insurance costs. It's 12 times whatever I have to pay plus $3,000.
Yep.
And that's a good place to be.
Yeah, that is good. So you go through all of that. I want to talk a little bit about what it was like to, I mean, you had a very successful career, high position. Like, how did it feel to say, I'm stepping away from this? And what were you hoping to spend your time doing?
Well, it was interesting because both me and my boss wanted me to work part-time or something, but HR would have none of it because disability is a generally considered an all or nothing kind of thing in the US. You know, it's like you can't be half disabled.
You can either do your job or you can't do your job.
Right. And I wanted to stay on, but then I thought about it and I said, do I want to spend what I assumed would be the next best year of my life working for the man? And I said, no. So it was pretty easy decision after that. I gave him a year's notice, which was more than they could have hoped for. And I left after that. And I said, do I want to leave my work on a high note or a low note? Because the other way I could have played it is I could have worked as hard as I could to keep my job, then taken a demotion, then repeat, you know.
Yeah.
And that would have been kind of ugly. And it would also have been financially against my best interest because the disability pays a percentage of your last paycheck.
Yeah.
So both from an emotional and a financial standpoint, I thought it would be better to leave earlier rather than later.
Yeah.
Earlier meaning giving them a year's notice.
Right.
Know.
Right. Okay. So that brings you to, you were what, 2012, mid 2012 when you finished work?
When I finished what? Work? Yeah. I finished work in January of 2013.
Oh, 2013. Okay. And then let's talk about deep brain stimulation because you had it the first time pretty early on, yes?
Not that early. I had it at 2016.
Oh, okay.
So that was 5 years in.
Okay. So what were your key symptoms that you were struggling with in the first 5 years?
Well, I wasn't really struggling with anything. It's my movement disorder specialist also has a PhD in pharmacology. And when he said I ought to think about DBS at some point, I believe him because he's a drug guy,
okay,
not a surgery guy.
Right.
So I know that when he's saying you ought to consider it, I took his advice very seriously.
Were you tremor dominant? Were you?
Yeah, tremor dominant, no anxiety, no depression. Sometimes I'd have an uneven gait. Those are probably my two biggest symptoms. And my writing has gone to uselessness.
Okay.
Total uselessness.
Okay, so you decide around at 216 you're gonna get it. So what happened?
I figured it was inevitable. It was just a matter of time. And when I timed it in 2016, I looked at it and I said, it's probably not a bad thing to get done earlier. That's what the research said that as well.
Okay.
So it went really well. I can give you the dates. January 29th was when I had the brain probes in. February 3rd was when I got the stimulator in. We turned it on February 12th. And then things got a little interesting because it was all red and puffy around my stimulator. And I called my neurosurgeon and got an intern because this is at Stanford where, they'll have interns and residents to cover for them. And I went to the ER, met the resident at the ER, and I said, it's infected. It's red and puffy around the stimulator. And they did a blood test and discovered my white blood cell count was 10,000, which is considered high, like not warning. It's yellow light, let's say. And they did a little ultrasound and didn't see any pus pockets around it or anything like that. And they sent me home with a diagnosis of inflammation of the chest, which I argued was not a diagnosis, merely a description of the symptoms. And with no antibiotics, no aspirin, no nothing. They said, call us back if you get a fever of over 101. And so I went home. I went with two friends of mine who took me there. And we were all just shocked. I mean, because, this is my brain we're thinking about. And, the bacteria love to follow metal. So they could go right up into my brain. And I was kind of surprised that he was so cavalier about it. And so sometimes when I try to figure out human behavior, I try to think about follow the money trail. And I said, this guy doesn't care about me. I'm one patient. But he does care about what my doctor thinks because my doctor is a continuing source of revenue for him. So I called my doctor. I said, look, I definitely got an infection. I have no doubt it's an infection. Tell the surgeon to look at it again, even though I don't have a fever of 101. And he did that. So I went back to the ER. And this time my white blood cell count was 17,600. And I could tell by the way the residents' eyes dilated that it was a big deal. And they then took this infection seriously, gave me howitzer-like antibiotics. And that was on the 20th of February. They pulled the stimulator on the 21st of February, the next day. And the brain probes came out the 24th of February because he took a biosample right here, which is where there's a little junction box. And that came back positive 3 days later.
Oh.
So it was kind of an adventure.
Yeah. Okay. So a total of days of having it. And then after they took it all out, you were like, I'm out, not doing that.
No, there's something called the microlesion effect.
Mm-hmm.
The act of inserting and removing those probes just causes little lesions in the brain, which are found to help the symptoms. And this typically lasts 3 or 4 months. Except for me, it lasted 3 years. So if it wasn't broke, I wasn't going to fix it.
Right. Okay.
And
so
assuming
it lasted that long and we know you had it again. What made you say, yep, I'm going to try this again?
Well, what made me say it is I now consider it like a consumer electronics purchase.
Okay.
Because it's like, everybody's
there's now it's not like
back in the olden days in
TVs that were $1 million. Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
Back in 2016, there was one company, Medtronic, and they were just fat and dumb and happy. Then 2 other companies came in and started offering better features. And so it's always like, okay, when do you make the purchase? And I think that I decided that when Boston Scientific and who's the other company? St. Jude's, Abbott, St. Jude's, when they came out with these probes with 16 endpoints instead of 4 endpoints, I said that's a major deal. And that was what convinced me. And I didn't want to get the 1.0 version, so I waited until the 2.0 came out and went with Boston Scientific.
Okay. And that was 2019?
That was, hold on. I keep spreadsheets of all the dates.
I can love it.
So that was, as I page down, 21, 4th of May, 21.
And how has it impacted you, positively? What symptoms are managed really well through your DBS?
The tremor is managed really well. I can type again, which is a beautiful thing if you're on the computer. And less so, but my do less leg dragging.
Mm-hmm.
And those are all the symptoms I had. I'd say my speech is a little worse, but not horrible or anything like that. I mean,
you sound really clear. So
yeah, well, it's more being searching for the words.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm fast enough to hide it from you, but sometimes I'm got to think, like Abbott St. Jude, for example. You might have recalled that I was searching for that one. Mm-hmm. And that could just be old age too. Is it old age or is it just Parkinson's?
Right. Okay. So, and no issues with programming or anything like that. How did that experience go? Was it programmed pretty well right out of the gate?
My movement disorder specialist is able to program both the Medtronics and the Boston Scientific. And he is a stickler for detail. He will tweak it until it gets perfect. Mm. And so, I at first I saw him like once every 2 weeks or 3 weeks, until we got it dialed in. And then we slowly backed off on the frequency as we got it so close that it was not interesting for him to spend more time on it, or for me to spend more time on it.
Yeah, I mean, it's so nice. I mean, you've had both sides, right? You had the bad infection, and then you had a pretty good experience. It's so nice to hear a great experience because there's so many other people that we hear and they're just not going great.
For example, it's been a very busy week because last week I had my support group, which I lead in South San Jose, and I had 3 people 2 were newly diagnosed and 1 wanted to get DBS. Mm-hmm. The guy who wanted to get DBS should not get DBS.
How come?
And I was trying to gently guide him to the right decision. But you can lose speech if you have an STN. meaning subthalamal nucleus is the endpoint for your DBS. And he did not have any speech buffer to lose. It was almost impossible to understand him from the start. And I tried to indicate to him that he doesn't speak very well and that he should think twice about that because he could lose more speech. And if he loses more speech, he'll be unintelligible if he isn't already unintelligible.
What are his symptoms that made him think he wants to get it?
Oh, he's had it for 20 years and he's got pretty bad dyskinesia.
Okay. Yeah.
And I'm not even sure it would help him because you also need to be carbidopa levodopa responsive.
Yeah.
And he isn't very responsive to the pills, but he has duopa, which goes directly in the intestine. And that seems to work for him. So that does make him carbidopa levodopa responsive, but not hugely so.
Yeah. I mean, I guess his age is obviously a factor. But I based on some of the conversations I've had, and I don't want to talk out of school, I'm not a doctor, but there's been a lot of talk about that whole idea of like having to be carbidopa levodopa responsive, and that it's not the most important thing, and that especially with people with young onset, he's obviously not young onset, he's had it for 25 years or whatever, but that thinking is changing a little bit.
And what I encouraged him to do is I encouraged him to go to, because I'm not a doctor either, obviously, is I encouraged him to go to Stanford where he's got to go before a committee that approves or disapproves of the surgery.
Yeah.
And there are people, it's not just the surgeon, it's the neuroscientists and people who've done his, what's the test you take?
You mean for the to get to see if you're a good candidate?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
There's one where you have to draw a clock and put in the numbers and so on and so forth.
Yeah, to make sure he also has. Yeah, I mean, at that age, I think at that age too, there's a lot more cognition issues that this isn't going to help. But
yeah, and I just encouraged him to see, because he saw a neurosurgeon at a local hospital who's more than happy to do it.
Yeah.
And I said, I think you should go to Stanford, even if you don't do it there, just to go in front of the committee. And if the committee says yes, great. And if they say no, I think you should find out why they said no and think hard about it.
Yeah. And
that was my endpoint advice to him.
Yeah. A lot of other things he might learn to be able to do, right? That could help him along the way. So when you, what was your medication plan like? So for those, after you had your original DBS, you went off it, you had some of that lesion benefit effect that happened. And then what were your medication by the time you went back, gotten DBS again?
I was on Ritari. I'm still on Ritari. Today I take 3 pills a day of the 245s. And I also take a little bit of Ropinirole twice a day, morning and night. Before, I didn't cut down that much on my meds because I run really weak STN. Meaning I can go a month without recharging my battery. So that says to me that I don't have that much voltage going through it. And it's not that intense. Because there's a trade-off between how powerful you can choose to stimulate with either meds or the DBS. And my doctor, who has, again, the PhD in pharmacology, he's going to go with the meds and use the DBS to help it along, but not be the main provider of my relief.
Yeah.
So I'm a happy camper, though.
Yeah, it sounds like you have access to a great care team. You live in a great place that has, accessibility to great doctors. What have you done elsewhere in your life in terms of a care partner and friends and family and support and that kind of thing?
Well, okay, my family's been incredibly supportive. My dad has, as you know, given a nice chunk of money to the Davis Finney Foundation. And I, much to my surprise, I was married in October of 21.
Practically, okay. You're almost still a newlywed. That's amazing.
Well, I was shocked because who would want to sign up for, how shall I put it? There are going to be some unfun years of Parkinson's. And this guy's a saint. I mean,
How did you meet?
Oh, this is kind of funny. We met at a place colloquially known as the Glass Coffin because it's got a lot of windows and it caters to an over 40 age group.
Got it.
And
Funny.
but he's a saint, and he teaches at a Catholic school. As I said, he left a lot of money on the table because he has a computer science degree from Stanford and chose to use it to teach math rather than write code. And that he's a great guy, and I was shocked to be able to meet somebody as nice as he was, who was interested in me as well.
Oh, that's
He's
so
also
nice.
rocket science smart. Like he studied Hebrew, the alphabet, for 2 hours and learned the entire Hebrew alphabet.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean, anyway.
Fun conversationalist, I bet.
Yeah. Oh, he knows a lot about everything.
Yeah. And so does he exercise too? Do you guys do a lot together?
We do. I did want to say that it's not I'm not accustomed to be the cute dumb one in the relationship.
Does there have to be a cute dumb one?
Well, I guess not.
Yeah.
In any case, yeah, we've done some biking together. It's pretty depressing though because he's a better biker than I am now. He just kind of started with it. We travel a lot together, and he has a little thing on his watch where it counts the steps. And on a typical day, we'll do like 15,000 steps, which is a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm exhausted, and he's not. And then he'll go see an opera that night, which I consider opera an expensive nap.
Yes.
But
so you go with him to the opera too? Yes.
No, I do not.
Oh, you don't? You're like, I'm not doing that.
Yeah, I'm not doing that. I'm too tired. I can go to the most exciting thing in the world.
I'm gonna pull out my Parkinson's card. I'm not going to the opera.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, plus it's like, hey, after 15,000 steps a day, I've had a full day. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So, what are some of the places that where did you go in 2022 that was your favorite? Did you have a favorite place you traveled to?
No, because of my work, I got to travel everywhere anyway. I had a global job.
Yeah.
And, let's see. Last year we went to Munich, Stuttgart, Munich, and Augsburg, and then we went to Mexico City and Cuernavaca. He loved Vienna, which we were at over Christmas, because they have 2 opera companies that have he went to an opera every night.
Oh wow!
He is out of
Big
control.
fan.
Even the first night he arrived, he flew in. Normal people would be jet lagged. He arrived at 3 and saw an opera at 7. I mean,
yeah, that's a lot.
It's a lot.
Good. Okay, so you have a great partner, and
yes.
you're not to the point where it seems like you need a whole bunch of support at this time in terms of you're still living your life, doing everything you want to do.
I also, one of the things I also do is because I participate in over 55 research studies.
Yeah, I wanted to talk about that. So you sort of did that, didn't you? Like right off the bat, you knew I want to get involved. So can you talk a little bit about that? I know people want to hear about how you got involved and what you did and how many have you been participating in?
Well, the first one I participated in was Michael J. Fox Foundation, PPMI. And they, they were looking for people who hadn't started meds yet. And I was about to start meds, and I heard about this foundation thing, and I said I should probably get in it. And I was at the Parkinson Institute, and at some point they introduced the coordinator for PPMI, and I said, I got to talk to you. And that got me my first research study. And that's a big one. And they need, I'm in year 9 or 10 of it now. And so they backed off on what they need, but they like to get cerebral spinal fluid samples. And that's unfun to donate, especially since I'm a tough draw. They had to take me to a radiologist to do it, who could see where the vertebral bones were and get the needle through.
And how many times do you get it drawn?
Order of magnitude, let's say 4.
Okay.
Maybe, over time. I've got a spreadsheet for that too, but it's not worth digging up the answer. Um, he the thing that stuck out in my mind about this is the first time I did it with the radiologist. He said, "I'll have you in and out here in 10 minutes," and 1 hour later, he was apologizing to me profusely.
Hmm.
You don't get surgeons like that to apologize very often.
You had a tough head
A tough what?
to get to.
Oh,
You couldn't
no,
get it?
no, tough. They do it down the lower back.
Oh, okay.
I'm confused, I guess.
No,
I'm
no,
not.
no, you said they had to get your cerebral fluid, and I was like, "Oh, well,
Oh no, they draw it down. It's the same thing, cerebrospinal fluid.
got it, spinal fluid, okay."
So they draw it in your lower back. Usually the needle between L4 and L5.
Okay. And so
No,
it
if
was
it
just a
was the
tough
head,
draw.
I'd be too freaked out by
I
that.
was like, that's quite a lot. I don't remember that being part of the protocol. That was a lot. So they just had a hard time getting it out of your spine.
Yeah, I've had lower back problems, and
Uh-huh.
that's
Okay.
the vertebrae are closer than they should be, probably.
Yes. I feel you on that one. Okay, so you've been involved with that one for a really long time. Are there any other ones that have been especially interesting in terms of, wow, you were part of a study and you found out the results and the results were sort of immediately applicable or anything like that?
Um, Most of the studies I've done have not been interventional; they've been
Hmm.
observational, just
Okay.
like the PPMI one.
Yeah.
The difference being interventional means you're trying a new drug, or you might get placebo, or there's a group that's getting it and a group that's not. In this, pretty much most of mine have been non-interventional because if they are interventional, it prevents you from doing anything else because they don't want to,
Hmm.
mix different things. Um, as I look through this, there have been a lot that they're trying to figure out if you've got tremor or not. For example, there was one with you wear an Apple Watch
Hmm.
and they detect whether you were having tremor or not or dyskinesia, and that was interesting. There's one on cognitive impairment I did that was very interesting by Kathleen Poston, and I wasn't impaired. Yeah.
Yeehaw. So
um,
a lot of people will say and encourage other people to participate in clinical trials and research for one of the benefits being you get more time with a doctor, right? You get more time with a team of movement disorder specialists. What has been your experience? And for people who are interested in it, what would you say are a couple of the benefits to doing it?
well, one of the benefits for me is I just feel is empowering. I'm not this victim who's sitting there, oh, no, I've got Parkinson's. I'm actively fighting it. That's for me the greatest benefit. Um, the other thing, the good thing about it is like I probably know every research scientist in the Bay Area who's doing Parkinson's research. That's probably a slight exaggeration, but not hugely so. Um, and I, for example, just pinged one of my doctor slash friends who's head of the department at Stanford, and we're going to have lunch in March. And it's just so if something comes down the pike, I suspect I'll hear about it sooner rather than later.
Yeah,
I
I
enjoy
mean
the person.
that's no small thing for
Yeah,
people,
I
yeah,
enjoy
right?
the yeah I enjoy the personal relationships I have with many of the doctors,
Hmm.
with the notable exception of the DBS neurosurgeon.
And when you were, sort of new to the game, were you just looking on clinical trials, Fox Finder? How are you finding trials to be part of
Well, I find them through the Fox
Fox
Finder, and
Finder?
then
Uh-huh.
once you kind of get a reputation, people start calling you.
Mhm.
Both for doctors will refer me on to people who are newly diagnosed and need some you know emotional support. They'll call me, and if they've got a study that they think they can benefit from me being in, they'll call me.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, so I don't proactively look anymore. They just find me.
Yeah. And have you been involved with any that had to do with exercise?
Yes, there's one by Joel Kramer called Speed: Study of Project EBO Exercise in Parkinson's Disease. Um, There's one about apathy in young onset Parkinson's disease that involves some exercise. Those are the couple that leap out at me.
Okay. What is your daily exercise routine like these days?
Well, interesting you asked that today because I just hired a personal trainer. She teaches a class every Wednesday for people with Parkinson's. She's very good. And here it is, my homework.
Okay.
So, but I try to make a Monday, Wednesday, Friday pedaling for Parkinson's at 9:30 Pacific time. And truth be told, I only do it 2 times a week because something always comes up. She wants me to do strength 3 times through 10 to 15 reps of all the strength exercises she came by and taught me. Mobility and balance 1 time through every day. Again, I think she's dreaming, but we'll have that discussion next time.
So did you meet with her to say, okay, I want a plan that I can get through on my own, or I'm going to work with her regularly?
No, it's got to be get through on my own because I'm traveling so much.
Yeah. Okay. Great. And were you at a point where you're like, okay, I need some accountability here?
No, I just thought I need to know what exercise. So I've got what I call the T-Rex build. Big, strong legs and little tiny arms.
Okay.
And I wanted to, yeah, you like it.
Yeah.
So I wanted to strengthen my upper body a little bit. And I never really lifted weights and stuff. And I didn't know if I'd be doing it wrong or anything. Plus I've had both my shoulders replaced for reasons that I can't explain, but because it's not like I do push-ups all the time.
You haven't been doing overuse exercises up there.
So, and one of my shoulder joints is a reverse shoulder joint replacement. They put the ball where the socket used to be and the socket where the ball used to be, which adds some complications to it. Because there was not enough socket left to put the socket in. I got a great selfie of that, but I don't know how. And I just wanted to get some sort of routine that I could do when I traveled as well. Even though, and I don't worry about the aerobic when I'm traveling because I'm walking so much.
Yeah.
And just something, but I can't carry weights either because you can't put them in the suitcase.
Yeah. So what are you going to take? Bands and stuff? Do you have a bunch of bands?
I haven't worked that out yet. We just met once about this and we've got to get this down while I'm here until that. But I've always done at least 3 aerobic leg things, usually biking on the stationary bike or the real bike. Like when I met the guy for DBS, I met him downtown San Jose and I biked there. Where are we going with this?
Yeah, I just wanted to know what your sort of weekly exercise.
Oh, and then I usually walk in through the neighborhood once a week with a friend of mine. And I don't ever lift weights, but that's changing. And I don't ever do balance exercises, but that's changing.
And you feel, is it noticeable when you're not doing it?
It's noticeable when I am doing it because I'm sore. She finds muscles I didn't know I had and makes them sore.
Well, like your symptoms. If you kind of fall off the wagon a little bit and aren't exercising as much, do your symptoms get worse? I don't want to plant or anything, but
no, I'm trying to think it through actually. I can get away with skipping a week and being okay. If I do more than that, it's not good.
Yeah.
Similarly, like I told you I take 3 Rotari a day. It's pretty easy for me to skip the middle Rotari. But then I might like at 4 o'clock in the afternoon when it's like, ooh, I should have taken that.
Yeah. Have you had any sleep issues, or are you a pretty good sleeper?
I've got problems sleeping basically because of prostate issues. Like many guys my age.
Yeah.
So I wake up about 2 or 3 times a night to pee, but other than that, I sleep just fine.
Not Parkinson's related necessarily.
Not Parkinson's related.
Yeah.
Kind of like some of my memory issues. I'm totally not Parkinson's related.
Right. Well, I appreciate you talking to me. I don't want to get off though before I ask you about. Polly said to ask you about quotes and your lists of quotes. I can tell you have lists already because you keep looking over at all the different lists you have of different things. But
well, what I have is Bart's four rules of travel, which could be Bart's 4 rules of life.
okay.
Rule number 1, be stoic. Rule number 2, always have reading material. Rule number 3 is be nice because you never know. And rule number 4 is inhale, exhale, repeat. Those are Bart's 4 rules of travel.
And life.
And life.
Okay. So she says, or you said you make up quotes, and that
Yeah.
what are some of your favorites aside from the one you shared with us a little bit ago?
Well, one, like I used to do Death Ride.
Yeah.
And I have a saying, anyone who does less than you is lazy and more than you is crazy.
I like that.
That's another one. I can't be, they come to me as the situation
as needed, right?
But
okay, so let's say you are, on stage with many, many thousands of people in front of you, and which you are currently, and you have a chance to offer them a quote for your advice for them on living well with Parkinson's. What is your quote?
Oh, I've got one actually. I have a picture of it. It was graffiti in Lisbon. I saw it said "Pode ser pior," which means it could be worse.
Oh, all right. Wait, Polly has a question. What about the actress May quotes you have, Bart?
Oh, yes. Mae West is my spiritual advisor.
Oh, okay.
And she has quite a few quotes. I don't know how many of them are appropriate for the family audience that we might have here, but how about, I'm trying to think of a family-oriented one. How about I've been in, here's one. No, I can't share this.
I bet Polly was like, I don't know about a family one.
There's, you know Mae West is, right? She's not before your time.
No,
she's the one who said, why don't you come up and see me sometime? Others that pop in my mind I shouldn't say.
Okay. Polly, you stumped him. He doesn't feel appropriate. She's yes, laughing. Okay. Well, I really appreciate you taking the time, Bart. Is there anything that I haven't asked about that I should have asked?
I can't think. I had my 3, which were diagnosis, work, Social Security, and DBS as the high points.
Okay.
And I guess a part of it is something I worry about is, am I able to have such a good attitude because my symptoms are well in check? And what's going to happen is I inevitably decline.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't have a good answer to that one. But I'd like to think that I'll stay more upbeat than most people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I think, even we just talked to Kevin, and Kevin, for a long time, his symptoms were in check, and he was doing great and doing all the things. And then it was, sort of a precipitous little period of decline. And he has said, it's been a real big transition. It's been a big thing, but he's still Kevin.
Yeah.
So, and I'm still going to be Bart.
Yeah, I hope so.
Well, I appreciate it. I really appreciate you sharing it with our audience. I know they're going to love it, and I appreciate everything you've done for the foundation. You're an ambassador, what your whole family's done for the foundation. Couldn't be more grateful to be able to do the work that we're doing because of the generosity of you and your father and all of that. So really appreciate it.
Not a problem. It's a pleasure to be with you.
Great. Well, thanks everybody, and we will see you soon.
Take care.
Bye.